Mark pretended to be kind to Vasili. Before leaving, he wrote a letter and handed it to him. "Take this to my wife," Mark said. But inside the letter were evil instructions. "When the boy carrying this letter arrives, take him to the soap factory. Push him into the big boiling pot. If you disobey me, I will be very angry. This boy is dangerous and will ruin us if he lives." There once lived a very wealthy man called Mark, but people in the town used to call him Mark the Rich. He had plenty of money, land, and servants, but his heart was wicked. Mark hated poor people. Whenever he saw beggars passing near his house, he would either shout for his servants to chase them away, or he would release his fierce dogs to attack them. But in that same house lived his little daughter, Anastasia. Unlike her father, Anastasia had a kind and gentle heart. She always felt pity for the poor, though she was small and could not change much about her father's ways. One hot afternoon, 3 very old beggars came to Mark's house. Their clothes were torn, their bodies looked weak, and they leaned on walking sticks as they begged for a place to rest. When Mark saw them, anger rose in his chest. He immediately called his servants to release the dogs and drive the beggars away. But Anastasia ran close to him, held his hand, and begged, "Papa, please let them sleep here tonight. Just this once. Do it for me." Mark frowned. He didn't like to be soft with beggars, but he also could not refuse his beloved daughter. Finally, he agreed. "Fine," he said. "Let them sleep in the loft. But by tomorrow morning they must go." That night, everyone in the house was fast asleep, but Anastasia could not rest. She kept thinking about the 3 strange beggars. Quietly, she tiptoed out of her room and climbed up to the loft to peep at them. What she saw made her little heart beat fast. The 3 old men were not sleeping at all. They stood in the middle of the loft, leaning on their sticks. Their long gray beards touched their hands as they whispered to each other in low voices. The eldest one asked, "What news is there tonight?" The second replied, "In the next village, a poor farmer called Ivan has just had his 7th son. What name and what destiny shall we give this child?" The third man whispered, "Call him Vasili, and let him inherit all the wealth of the wicked man whose loft we stand in now, the same man that wanted to drive us away." Anastasia gasped. She had heard everything. She didn't wait to hear more. She quickly ran back to her father's room, shook him awake, and told him all that the beggars had said. Mark the Rich sat up, shocked. His heart began to beat fast, but not with fear, with greed and wickedness. He thought about it over and over. Then at dawn, he prepared his horse and carriage. He would go straight to the next village to find out if this story was true. Mark arrived at the next village early in the morning. He went straight to the priest's house and asked him if any baby had been born recently. The priest nodded. "Yes, yesterday a baby boy was born in the poorest house here. His father is Ivan, a poor farmer. He already has 6 small children, and now this is the 7th. I baptized the boy myself and gave him the name Vasili. But to be honest, I don't know who will stand as his godfather. Nobody wants to because the family is too poor." Mark's eyes shone with greed and fear. This was exactly what the beggars had said. He immediately offered, "I will be his godfather. I will also prepare a big feast for the christening." The poor villagers were surprised but also happy. Mark the Rich, a great and wealthy man, wanted to be godfather to a beggar's child? What a miracle! The baby was baptized again properly, with a fine celebration. Afterwards, Mark pulled Ivan, the poor farmer, aside and whispered, "Ivan, my friend, you are too poor to raise this child. Give him to me. I'll take care of him, make him successful, and to show you I mean well, I will pay you 1,000 crowns." Ivan thought about it for a while. He loved his baby, but he also thought of his starving children at home. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he agreed. Mark counted the money, wrapped baby Vasili in a warm fox skin, and carried him away in his carriage. But in Mark's wicked heart, he was planning something else entirely. Mark drove far away from the village with baby Vasili. The road passed through high cliffs, and soon he reached a steep and dangerous place. Mark stopped his carriage, carried the baby to the edge of the cliff, and muttered, "Let's see how you will take my wealth now." With that, he threw the baby over the cliff. Satisfied, he dusted his hands, climbed back into his carriage, and rode home as if nothing had happened. But God's plan was different. Not long after, some foreign merchants were traveling along that same road. They owed Mark 12,000 crowns, so they were on their way to see him. As they passed the cliff, they heard the faint cry of a baby. Shocked, they looked down and saw a small green meadow wedged between the cliffs. And in the middle of the grass lay a baby, alive and safe. They quickly climbed down, carried the child, and wrapped him carefully. When they reached Mark's house, they told him excitedly about the miracle. On our way here, we found a baby crying on the cliffs. Look, here he is. Mark's heart nearly stopped. He recognized the baby at once. It was the same child he had thrown away. He forced a smile and said, "What a beautiful child. Since you don't know whose baby it is, leave him with me. In fact, I will cancel the debt you owe me in exchange." The merchants, happy to be free from debt, agreed at once and left. That night, Mark prepared to get rid of the child once again. Mark placed little Vasili inside a strong wooden barrel. He sealed the lid tightly, making sure there was no way out. Then he carried the barrel to the seashore and pushed it deep into the water. "There," he muttered. "This time you won't come back." The barrel floated far away. For many days it was carried by the waves until it reached the shore of a monastery. The monks in the monastery were drying their fishing nets when they heard a strange sound, crying. At first, they thought it was just seabirds. But the sound grew louder, and they traced it to a barrel bobbing at the edge of the sea. The monks pulled the barrel out, opened it, and to their surprise, they saw a living child inside. They carried the boy to their abbot, who listened to the story and declared, "This is a sign from God. We will raise this child as our own." They gave him the name Vasili, and brought him up in the monastery. Years passed, and Vasili grew into a strong and handsome young man. The monks taught him reading, writing, singing, and many other skills. He was gentle, hard-working, and respectful. Among all the young men in the monastery, no one could read as beautifully, write as clearly, or sing as sweetly as Vasili. His voice in the choir was so wonderful that anyone who heard it felt peace in their hearts. Because he was so trustworthy, the abbot made him the keeper of the monastery's wardrobe and gave him many responsibilities. Everyone loved him. They said he was a true gift from heaven. But Vasili's life was not yet free from danger. His story was about to take another sharp turn. One day, Mark the Rich traveled and passed through the monastery. The monks welcomed him warmly, as they always did with wealthy visitors. They showed him the church, the living quarters, and all their treasures. When they entered the church, the choir was singing. Among all the voices, one stood out. It was so clear and beautiful that Mark had to ask, "Who is singing like that?" The abbot replied, "That is Vasili, the boy we found in a barrel many years ago. He has grown into a fine young man. God truly blessed us the day he came here." Mark's heart jumped. He knew at once it was the same child he had tried to kill twice. His teeth clenched, but he forced a smile. "Ah, such talent. This boy is very special. My abbot, please release him to me. I will make him overseer of all my business, and I will also donate 20,000 crowns to your monastery." The abbot was not sure, but after consulting with the other monks, they agreed. They didn't want to block Vasili's chance at a better life. Mark finally had Vasili in his hands again. But instead of business, he was planning something deadly. Mark pretended to be kind to Vasili. Before leaving, he wrote a letter and handed it to him. "Take this to my wife," Mark said. But inside the letter were evil instructions. "When the boy carrying this letter arrives, take him to the soap factory. Push him into the big boiling pot. If you disobey me, I will be very angry. This boy is dangerous and will ruin us if he lives." Vasili didn't know what was inside. He carried the letter and began his journey. On the road, he met 3 beggars sitting under a tree. They looked very old, with long beards and tired faces. "Where are you going, young man?" they asked. "I am going to the house of Mark the Rich, to deliver this letter to his wife," Vasili replied. "Let us see the letter," they requested. Vasili handed it to them. The beggars blew on the paper and returned it to him. "Go now," they said. "You will not be forsaken." Vasili continued his journey, unaware that the beggars had changed the words inside the letter. When Vasili arrived at Mark's house, he greeted Mark's wife politely and gave her the letter. She opened it, read it carefully, and her eyes widened in shock. The letter said something very different. When this young man arrives, prepare for a wedding. Tomorrow, let him marry our daughter Anastasia. Do not delay. This is my command. Mark's wife almost fainted. Could it be true? She called her daughter Anastasia. When Anastasia saw Vasili, her heart was glad. He was handsome, humble, and kind. They dressed Vasili in fine clothes, and the next day, a grand wedding was held. Vasili married Anastasia, the daughter of Mark the Rich. By the time Mark returned from his journey, he was met by his wife, daughter, and new son-in-law. When Mark saw Vasili standing there as his daughter's husband, his face turned red with anger. "What nonsense is this? How dare you marry my daughter without my consent?" he shouted. His wife quickly gave him the letter. "I only followed your instructions. Here is the letter you sent." Mark read it. The handwriting was his. But the words were not his plan. His head spun in confusion. Inside himself he growled, "You escaped death 3 times, Vasili, but I will get rid of you once and for all." Outwardly, Mark smiled and pretended to be happy. For 1 full month, he acted kind and cheerful towards Vasili and Anastasia. But in his heart, he was cooking another plan. After a month, Mark called Vasili privately. "My son," he said with false sweetness, "I have a task for you. I want you to go and visit my good friend, the Serpent King. His castle is at the very end of the world. 12 years ago, he built that castle on my land. Go and collect 12 years' rent from him. Also, ask him what happened to my 12 ships that sailed to his land 3 years ago and never returned." Vasili could not refuse his father-in-law. With sadness, he kissed his wife Anastasia goodbye. She cried bitterly and hung a small bag of biscuits around his neck for the journey. Then he set out, not knowing that Mark had just sent him into the mouth of death. Vasili walked for many days. His feet ached, and his biscuits were almost finished. One afternoon, as he passed under a very wide and tall oak tree, he suddenly heard a voice. "Vasili, where are you going?" He stopped and looked around. No one was there, only the old tree with its huge branches. Vasili asked carefully, "Who spoke to me?" "It is I, the oak tree," the voice replied. "Tell me where you are going." "I am on my way to see the Serpent King," Vasili said. The oak tree groaned and said, "Then please ask him this for me, rotten at the roots, half dead but still green. Must the old oak stand much longer on this earth?" Vasili nodded. "I will ask." And he continued his journey. Vasili soon came to a wide river. There was only one small ferry boat to cross, and an old man with gray hair was rowing it back and forth. The ferryman helped Vasili into the boat. While rowing, he sighed and asked, "My young friend, where are you traveling to?" "To the Serpent King," Vasili replied. The ferryman leaned forward. "Then please beg him to answer me this. For 30 years, I have ferried people across this river. Will I have to keep rowing forever?" "Yes, I will ask him," Vasili promised. When they reached the other side, the ferryman thanked him, and Vasili walked on. After many days, Vasili reached a narrow sea passage. There was no bridge in sight, but across the water lay a giant whale, stretched from one end of the strait to the other. People and animals were walking over its back like it was a road. As Vasili stepped onto the whale, he heard a deep rumbling voice. "Young man, where are you going?" the whale asked. "I am going to the Serpent King," Vasili answered. The whale groaned. "Then please ask him this for me. For 3 years I have been lying here as a bridge. Men and horses have almost crushed my back into my ribs. Must I remain like this much longer?" "I will remember to ask," said Vasili. Then he crossed safely to the other side and continued. Finally, after walking and walking and walking, Vasili arrived at a wide green meadow. In the middle stood a dazzling castle. Its white marble walls sparkled, its mother-of-pearl roof shone like a rainbow, and its crystal windows reflected the sun like fire. Vasili entered and passed through many shining rooms until he reached the last one. Inside, a beautiful young woman sat on a bed. She gasped when she saw him. "Oh, Vasili, what brings you to this cursed place?" Vasili explained his mission and told her about the oak, the ferryman, and the whale. The girl shook her head sadly. "You were not sent here for rent. You were sent here to die. The Serpent King will devour you. Quickly, hide in this chest under the bed. When he comes, I will stroke his head and trick him into answering your questions." She pushed him inside, just as the castle began to shake. A loud hissing and rustling noise filled the air. The Serpent King had arrived. The Serpent King stormed into the room and threw himself on the bed, panting. "I have flown across half the world. I am very tired. Scratch my head." The girl stroked his ugly head gently and said in a sweet voice, "My lord, you know everything. I had a strange dream while you were away. Can you tell me what it means?" "Speak quickly," the serpent hissed. "I dreamt of an oak tree that said, rotten at the roots, half dead but still green, must it stand much longer on the earth?" The serpent laughed. "It will stand until someone pushes it down with his foot. Then treasure, more gold and silver than Mark the Rich owns, will be found under its roots." The girl continued, "Then I dreamt of a ferryman who asked, 'For 30 years I have rowed to and fro. Will I keep rowing forever?' 'That depends on him,' the serpent hissed. 'If someone enters the boat, he just has to push it off, step out, and never look back. The passenger will take his place.' Finally," said the girl, "I dreamt of a whale lying as a bridge. He cried, 'For 3 years I have been trampled by men and horses. Must I lie here much longer?' He will stay there until he throws up the 12 ships of Mark the Rich that he swallowed 3 years ago. Then he can dive into the sea and heal his back." The serpent yawned, rolled over, and began snoring so loudly that the windows rattled. The girl quickly opened the chest and whispered, "Now, Vasili, you have your answers. Run for your life." Vasili hurried away from the serpent's castle. His heart was still pounding, but he now carried the answers. When he reached the strait, the whale groaned. "Did you remember me? What did the Serpent King say?" "Yes," Vasili replied. "He said you must throw up the 12 ships of Mark the Rich that you swallowed 3 years ago. Then you will be free to dive back into the sea and heal your back." At once, the whale lifted itself and vomited out 12 ships, complete with their crews, cargo, and sails. The sea roared as the whale splashed in joy and swam deep into the ocean, finally free. The sailors on the ships shouted for joy, thanking God and also thanking Vasili. Vasili walked on and reached the river again. The ferryman was waiting with his small boat. "Well, young man, did you find out my fate?" the old man asked. "Yes," Vasili said. "When you ferry me across, listen carefully to what I tell you." The ferryman rowed him to the other side. Then Vasili leaned close and whispered. "The Serpent King said, the moment another person enters the boat, you must step out quickly, push the boat away, and never look back. That man will become the new ferryman in your place." The old man's face lit up with joy. "Ah, may God bless you, my son. You have saved me from endless suffering." Vasili continued until he came to the old oak tree. It groaned when it saw him. "Well, Vasili, what did the Serpent King say?" Vasili answered, "He said you must fall, but only when someone pushes you with his foot." The oak sighed. "Then try." Vasili stepped forward and pushed the tree with his foot. With a great crash, the oak fell to the ground, shaking the earth. Under its roots lay a mountain of treasure, gold, silver, and jewels shining brighter than anything Vasili had ever seen. At that moment, the 12 ships that the whale had freed sailed up to the shore nearby. The sailors quickly carried all the treasure onto the ships. Then, standing proudly on the first deck, Vasili saw the 3 mysterious beggars he had once met on the road. They raised their hands and blessed him. "Heaven has smiled on you, Vasili. Your life will be filled with peace." Then they vanished, and he never saw them again. The ships returned home with Vasili, carrying the treasure. His wife Anastasia and her mother welcomed him with tears of joy. They celebrated his safe return, and Vasili shared his wealth with the poor, feeding the hungry and clothing the naked. But when Mark the Rich heard that Vasili had returned alive, and even richer than before, his heart boiled with anger. He could not believe the young man had survived again. Determined to complain, He set out for the Serpent King himself. When he reached the river, the ferryman was waiting. Mark jumped into the boat, shouting, "Quick, take me across!" But this time, the ferryman remembered Vasily's words. He stepped out of the boat, pushed it away, and walked off. Mark shouted in shock, but it was too late. The boat drifted into the middle of the river, and from that day, Mark became the new ferryman, condemned to row people across the water forever. Meanwhile, Vasily and Anastasia lived happily together. His mother-in-law also lived with them peacefully. Vasily never became proud or wicked. Instead, he used his wealth to care for others. The poor never went hungry when he was around. Strangers were never turned away from his door. He became known not as Vasily the rich, but as Vasily the kind. As for Mark, his riches were gone, his power was gone, and his name was forgotten. He grew old and weak, his hair and beard turned snow white, his eyes dimmed, but still he rode on, ferrying people across the river, paying forever for his wickedness. And so the story ends. The proud and selfish lost everything, while the humble and kind-hearted gained all.